This episode is made possible by NetSuite by Oracle and Brex, the AI-powered spend platform.
Hi, this is Akash Palkhiwala. I'm CFO of Qualcomm, and you're listening to CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 962.
The excitement around ChatGPT was around the ability to take a large language model and generate new content. That's what generative AI means. So we take a set of inputs, we run it through a language model, and now the machine can generate new content. And so to do that, you have to feed a large language model. And how you feed that is scary to a lot of big enterprises who care and have obligations and regulatory requirements around keeping personalized information secure and private.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Brandon Nussey, CFO of Coveo. More than any other human quality or characteristic, Brandon Nussey is known for having a calm demeanor. Or so Coveo's finance leader tells us near the end of our discussion. It's an enviable quality and one Nussey acquired early in his career. When during the years of the dot-com bubble implosion, Nussey received his first CFO appointment. A tour of duty that required him to learn quick how to remain composed and calm in high-pressure, high-stakes environments. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. 37,025-1. These are the three numbers to remember to get the visibility and control you need to make the right business decisions instantly. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down expenses. 1. Because your business is one of a kind, you should get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system and with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need, all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, at netsuite.com/KPI. That's netsuite.com/KPI. Hello, we're speaking with Brandon Nussey, CFO of Coveo. Brandon, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Good to be here.
So, Brandon, we're going to begin where we always do, which is to ask you to look back for us. And we're interested in hearing about those experiences that you feel prepared you to become a CFO. What would come to mind for you?
Yeah, so like I imagine a lot of the finance execs you've spoken to and the audience, I started in the public accounting firms in a small technology-oriented town called Waterloo, Ontario, about an hour outside of Toronto. It wasn't really through any well-designed plan. It's just where I happened to go to university and joined the local office of KPMG. This was during the technology .com era. So late 90s is when I got my accreditation as what's now a CPA up here in Canada. And because Waterloo became a tech center, I worked with a lot of public technology clients, and that really resonated with me. That was kind of my first foray into what's been a long career now in technology. And it was really that experience at KPMG that got that going.
Did you ever want to just change offices? Did you want to travel as a young person? Did you or you were settled there and you stayed there your whole tenure with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I did, because technology got into my veins and into my bloodstream. I did entertain going down to Silicon Valley with KPMG and joining that office there. Family reasons kept me here, and again, this region was doing quite well at the time. This is where BlackBerry was founded, and companies like OpenText and others in the software space. So
And at that place in time, BlackBerry was huge.
it was great. It was a wonderful story, and the community was thriving off of their success and others. And it was a small community. And the benefits of being in a smaller community is exposure, right? If I went down to Silicon Valley, I don't know how it would have changed my career for better or for worse. But being in this small community, I really had a chance to network well. And
You're looking for that doorway into industry. At after 2-3 years, you're thinking, okay, what would be the door of entry for me? What would work best, or was it different?
no, that was pretty clear. I appreciated my experience at KPMG because of the networking it enabled and the different businesses I got to see, and great people there. But it was pretty obvious to me I was not set to be an auditor. So I always had in mind that as soon as I could find the right opportunity, I would be leaving, and really use that KPMG as a springboard.
And were you thinking controllership? Were you thinking what path were you likely to take?
So that's interesting as well. At that time, in the .com era, what became really apparent, even through the audit work at KPMG, was that in the technology world, revenue makes the world go round, I like to say. There was a lot of accounting changes happening at that time. The new revenue recognition standard came in, and I became a bit of a specialist in that. So I joined a company called Descartes Systems Group, which is a public company in NASDAQ and here in Toronto, logistics software space. And I joined there as kind of the revenue recognition guru. And what I quickly found is that here's little old me at 26 years old or whatever I would have been at that time. I don't remember the precise age, but obviously early in my career. And this is a successful, well-capitalized public technology company. And the CEO wanted to spend an awful lot of time with me, because revenue makes these businesses go round. And because I was touching all of the agreements, that led its way into forecasting and business performance and a lot of the operational side of the business. And, again, as a young, energetic, aspiring finance leader, I was able to, as I said, senior management wanted to spend an awful lot of time with me because they really wanted to understand what was going to show up in the financial statements at quarter end. So,
What are you getting at here? I think you entered the CFO office there. Is that right? And when do you do that? I know you were there 7 years. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the .com bubble bursts. And that had wide-ranging impacts in the technology space, of course. Didn't affect us directly in terms of our own business model, but it affected a lot of our customers. And so, what was a growing revenue stream became one that was under some pressure. And anyway, the board of directors decided to make a management change at both the CEO and the CFO ranks. Again, I'm young. I had the benefit of being technically strong. I had the benefit of really knowing the business, what was selling, what was making money, where we were having success, where we weren't. And I was also, involved in the public conference call aspect of how we reported metrics and so on. So there was lots of well-seasoned candidates inside the company that also, wanted to have that CFO position. And the board of directors ultimately chose the inexperienced young person, young Brandon, because of that operational.
You must be a very likable individual, Brandon.
I do.
The CEO that exited was your mentor, and you would have thought darn, my mentor's leaving. But under the circumstances, it turned out to be a rather positive development for you, I guess.
Yeah, I had good relationships across the company, so I would say I always felt well supported. And I would say the first real mentor I had was the chair of the audit committee. As you go through periods of change like that in a business, having someone like that on the board of directors is extremely helpful for a young CFO who's never done it before. So he was very helpful for me during that time, and that was probably the first closest thing to a mentor I had early on, for sure.
And how many years post KPMG are you entering the CFO office?
Maybe 4.
Wow.
Yeah. Something.
I don't usually ask age, but how old were you?
I think I was 28 years old.
Okay, that's what I want to get at.
I was 28, 29. I think
you were 20-something CFO, which is pretty unusual. I want to just go back to your door of entry, revenue recognition. It's something in my memory talking about there was some sort of development, and it had to do with, was it software sales or something, or is that what your area of specialization was? What was the big issue back then? There was a lot of business press headlines around it.
Sure was, again, because all the pressure in dot-com era, market cycle, lots of money being made in the technology space, and a lot of pressure on companies to grow revenue. And if you could grow revenue, you were going to get a strong valuation in the market. And so with that came abuse. And there were companies at the time, revenue recognition was, kind of basic principles. And in the technology world, folks started to get creative. What if we sold a bunch of software to resellers? So the accounting standards setters came out with a thick Bible called SOP 97-2, and that became it was software-specific revenue recognition guidance that formed the foundation for much of the revenue guidance today.
Wow. Okay, so as you charted your path there and this development, were you an interim CFO? Was there a testing, sort of a testing period? Frequently that's the case. Do you think that's?
Yeah. It was. I can't remember if that was formally that way, but it was certainly understood that we think there's potential here. He certainly knows the business, and the mandate became. Because revenue was under pressure, get the costs in line. This was an era much like the one we just went through, where it was grow, and we'll figure out the cost side of things later. And as that growth, comes under pressure, there was a lot of shareholder and board pressure to get costs under control. So that was the mandate. We went from growth mode to all right. And we ended up cutting, I think, 50% of the company in order to get costs in line. And that was really the mandate at that time. So it was, I think, in part why they took a chance on me is because I sort of had a good line of sight as to where we were making money, where we weren't, what was working well, what wasn't. I had the technical underpinnings. Like, obviously, I could do the table stakes side of things, but I think that's where it differentiated me as a candidate at the time.
Would love to have you recall for us a moment where you perhaps had to go in after they sort of gave you the blessing, you had to present before the board, or you had to go before, the senior management and really be tested as you present it. And it had to be a very nervous period for you. Am I right about that? Or do you look back at it a little differently and you felt confident? I don't know.
I would say the most nerving thing was the public market side where, again, I was always in the room. I was always around the hoop, if I were to use a sports analogy, but you're not the one answering the question from the analyst. You're the one putting the binder in front of the.
How did you master that? How did you come up to speed? And was the CEO sitting there beside you, I would imagine, and you'd look at each other as to who's fielding that one? Yeah.
Yeah, so the answers were easy because I knew them. The confidence to deliver them and how to That was something I needed to learn. That wasn't necessarily innate for me.
Like a choice of words can really create doubt where there shouldn't have been any. Or am I right? I mean, it's the delicacy of delivering the message. Yeah.
For sure. And there's a confidence that has to come alongside it. And of course, while some of these analysts and shareholders knew me a little bit, there was certainly probably some questions in their mind as to whether, I was sufficiently experienced for the job at the time appropriately. So, that confidence was something I needed to build. And, I always felt like I had the internal support, though. I always felt like the management team respected me, and so that went a long way.
Do you recall, is there anything, and again, for a finance executive you just meet networking who's got a similar situation, they're about to take that big step and be on a phone call beside their CEO with all the analysts, what do you avoid? What would you tell that person? What should I avoid? What should I not try?
When you're explaining, you're losing. So answer the question, communicate clearly, and try to avoid lengthy explanations, which tend to lead to more questions. So I have this, it's not my saying, something I read somewhere along the lines that stuck was, when you're explaining, you're losing.
That's great. That's really terrific. That's great. You get into the weeds more and more, you're going to create doubt. Yep. Is what happens. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for that. There have been a number of CFO chapters before Coveo that we'd like to jump ahead, though, to Coveo. And tell us about this company. What does it do and what are its offerings?
It's a really interesting company. We're a public company that's traded in Toronto on the Toronto Stock Exchange right now, about $1 billion market cap. We'll do about $130 million in revenue this year. So a little bit undersized to be a public company, though here in Canada, you tend to get a little more of companies going public a little earlier. We are in the AI software space. We've been here for 10 years. So certainly this is an area with a lot of hype and a lot of interest and a lot of noise right now. Coveo's been working with close to 700 of the world's largest companies. Folks like SAP and Salesforce and Workday are all customers. A lot of banks are customers. Insurance companies are customers. A lot of big e-commerce sites are customers. They use us to our AI models that are specifically built for this. They use us to help automate customer service. So how do I allow my customers to solve their problems themselves so that they don't have to talk to an agent? They use us for better product search and recommendation engines on their e-commerce site. So how do I improve the amount of revenue I get per visitor? And we do that through, again, these purpose-built specific AI use cases that we have technology for. And we like to think we do it better than anyone else. We're able to do this in a really personalized way for the consumer. If you're on an e-commerce site, what you're going to experience is going to be different from what I experience. And it's our AI in the background that's helping to drive all of that.
Again, I'm going back to the analyst calls because even now I have to imagine the analyst questions from 2 years ago or even a year ago were not as sophisticated or perhaps as AI smart. We've all learned together over the last 12 months. And I think the perception of AI has matured and people are probably asking you more specific questions. And as we all try to understand the AI landscape, how am I doing? And I would think you're answering some tougher questions or more AI specific questions.
It's been a wild year. For sure. We like to describe it as, about this time a year ago is when ChatGPT kind of awoke the world to the potential of AI. And from there on, it's been board level conversations, certainly CEO and executive teams, businesses all around the world recognizing, okay, this can have a really profound impact on my business. So it starts with that of, okay, there's everyone's eyes is open to AI has come a long way and has, some really significant potential. But then a lot of the questions that you just asked are the ones that get asked. Where do I start? Am I trying to automate out my finance team, or am I, should I focus on customer service? Can I drive more revenue through AI? How do I approach this? Then how do I actually pull it off? Like, where do I start? How do I pull it off? I've got data all across my company. Do I just plug this into ChatGPT? And what about security and privacy and accuracy? And is this expensive? And all those questions were asked. And then the last is, who's going to help me do this? Do I build my own teams? Are there companies out there who can help? And so we've been helping our customers through that journey all year long. It's a core underpinning of our value proposition is because we've been in this space, we know what we're doing. We've built a lot of I'll say the plumbing layer, the less sexy part of how we connect to your data securely and how we keep it inside your own environment, and how we make sure that we're not using AI models with your data to make your competitors smarter, and all of these concerns that big companies and big enterprises care a lot about is the journey we've been on. And I'd say the analyst community and the financial community has been on that same journey. In the beginning, it was just basic understanding of what's machine learning, what's generative AI.
Let me ask you a question about that, because even as I think journalists are struggling as well. But there are companies out there that would love to suggest that they're in your space already, but in fact, what they're talking about is not really AI. It's something lesser. Maybe they want to get into your space, but what question should a company ask to determine whether something is a truly AI, pioneered offering like Coveo has?
So one thing that we like to do, take our e-commerce offering where we will help someone like Bass Pro Shops as a customer provide a personalized shopping experience at the end of the day, so that if Jack goes to the website and clicks on 3 different things, we're going to start to show different results to you than when I go to that website and I take a slightly different path. And so if you're just doing simple search and recommendations, meaning you've gone and you've put in a keyword and all we're doing is returning things that match that keyword, that's not AI. That's just, keyword matching at the end of the day. To create that personalized experience when we don't know anything about you, that's AI in the background doing that. So that simple question of can you do personalization at scale is a good question to ask to determine whether there's real technology behind it or whether we're doing simple matching in the background.
That's helpful. Thank you. I want to ask you a similar security question now. What should CFOs and finance leaders, what is the security related question they really need to be asking as they look to adopt or beefed up some of their AI approaches?
Where's my data going? The excitement around ChatGPT was around the ability to take a large language model and generate new content. That's what generative AI means. So we take a set of inputs, we run it through a language model, and now the machine can generate new content, whether that's a poem or it's helping your kids write an essay as part of their homework or what have you, right? That was the kind of the eye-opening moment for everybody that we're no longer just grabbing information, understanding intent, and returning that same information. We are now generating new content. And so to do that, you have to feed a large language model, and how you feed that is scary to a lot of big enterprises who care and have obligations and regulatory requirements around keeping personalized information secure and private. And also accuracy was the other thing that started to come out in the early days of these large language models aren't perfect, then they will hallucinate. And those are the questions that every executive has to ask about their data. Where's it going? How's it being used? And making sure that you have very clear answers to that.
Just in regards to data and your FP&A team, curious how these two are sort of coming together, and how does it happen? Whether there's something you've done organizationally. And I guess I'm getting at the point there are data experts within your organization, and you have planning and financial minded individuals. And all this customer data that you're tracking, we've learned that finance leaders are playing a large role in understanding customer behaviors and understanding when they're getting close to closing a deal, or helping the organization better understand where they should be allocating resources in that customer experience area. But who's involved in that? Are your financial planning and analysis people involved in that, or is it really a customer success group?
Yeah.
Participates.
Yeah, for our customers, it's our customer success and our data engineers that are most helpful to our customers. We certainly use our own offerings internally for our own customer support. The other thing we do a nice job of is making it easy for employees to get their own answers to their own set of problems. So pulling together all of Coveo's specific data and providing a tool for employees to search and find the answers they need. We're not.
How old a tool is that? Is that something that's been around a while, or is that?
This is where the business started, over a decade ago, and obviously that, where we are today versus where we were over a decade ago, that has certainly evolved. But yeah, this is the roots of the heritage of the company for sure.
We always like to try to ask you about a business dynamic or something that you weren't measuring. I know you haven't been there all that long, but I'm sure there was something. Maybe it was a metric that you just realized the organization needed to be educated differently about, or maybe it was some business dynamic that you felt, we're paying attention to it, but we have to measure it differently. I don't know. I'm just curious about something you might have brought forth and said, let's talk about this more often.
Yeah. What comes to mind, and actually your previous question hit on this, what we've seen happen in, I'll say, software more broadly, particularly software being sold into the enterprise. And Coveo, we would have these predictive bookings models. So based on pipeline, what that pipeline looks like, where various opportunities are in their stage of progress, we would predict future bookings off of that based on the characteristics that we saw and history. The problem was, as 2023 progressed, things weren't behaving like they used to. Deal cycles were taking longer. A lot more opportunities, would come into the pipeline and then maybe just come out altogether because budgets weren't available and things of that nature. So we've had to put a lot more attention and a lot more focus onto just not, I'll say, the superficial layer of the pipeline, but getting into the real details of, okay, what is actually going on here? And how do we put even more attention to what the pipeline is telling us about the future? I've always said that great finance teams look forward. Good finance teams report on the past. And so that forecasting element's always been near and dear to my heart. And it's a challenging environment right now for everyone. And we're trying to be as scientific and smart about it as we can be. But when the dynamics are changing, that forces you to kind of rethink some things. So a lot of energy going into that.
Yep, nice, some nice insight there for us. Thank you. We're up to what we like to refer to as our finance strategic moment question. And this might have happened anytime during your career. Might have happened 15 years ago. Might have happened last week. Would you have one to share with us? A finance strategic moment?
Yeah, I'm going to the one that comes to mind amongst a couple, but the one I think I'll spend some time on here with you is the company I was at prior to Coveo was a company called Lightspeed Commerce. We were in the point of sale and payment space, selling to small businesses in the retail and restaurant sectors all around the world. I joined there. We were a pretty small company, less than 100 million in revenue. It was a company that was growing well, generally had customers that were quite happy with the software that we sold in. But in the small business space, of course, a lot of restaurants go out of business. A lot of retail concepts start and fail. And so churn in the business model was something that you just had to deal with. It was just a reality, no matter how good your product was, how good your company was. And so to help overcome that churn, it was as I joined that company, getting at the business model and the unit economics of the business model, it became really apparent that we needed to grow how much revenue per customer we brought. You know, you'd spend a certain amount of money to win a customer, and you wanted the return for that money to be sufficient to cover those costs over the long run. And when you experience just natural churn, it makes that measure even more important. So to grow that revenue per customer, which is what I concluded we needed to do, not just me alone, obviously, but working with the executive team, we had to introduce a new product offering, which was our payments product offering. So the ability then to not just be a software provider to these retail and restaurant shops, but also to be the payment processor for them as well, so that they could, in one system, sell you a pair of jeans and accept payment for that pair of jeans. And as an avid follower of the technology market and public company in general, I saw the success that someone like Shopify had in this business model, and Toast is another company in this space, and they had tremendous success as well, and felt like we needed to emulate it. But it took an executive sponsor, which I chose to be, and it was a specialized thing that we needed to build, and in part because it had compliance-oriented nature. If you're going to be a payment processor, you're going to touch payment flows, and so you got to handle those properly. But anyway, I became the executive sponsor for that, and it was a huge success for us, and ultimately was a big driver of what led to really successful IPO for us in Toronto, and eventually onto the New York Stock Exchange, and allowed us to really build that business. As I mentioned, I think less than 100 million when I joined, and about 800 million when I left 5.5 years later. So,
was any part of that a build or partner sort of decision? Did you have to build it in-house? Did you partner?
Yeah, a bit of both. So you kind of partner with the banking system, companies like, we eventually ended up on Stripe's platform, but there's a lot of software and a lot of compliance around it that we needed to build to make the customer experience right, and to make sure that we were doing our jobs as a payment processor. And so there was that overall project of selecting the supplier, negotiating with them, and then helping to get our product to market. And it was really a really good rallying moment for our company. And again, it really changed our trajectory and our future.
CFOs and controllers, does expense management feel like a necessary evil? It's time to switch to Brex. Brex automates and accelerates spend management with easy-to-use corporate cards, travel, expense management, and bill pay, all on one AI-powered platform. Brex makes it easy to boost efficiency and compliance enterprise-wide and free up your managers, employees, and accounting team for higher impact work. Top companies from startups to enterprises are using Brex to automate manual work and transform their finance operations. We're talking DoorDash, Robinhood, Airtable, and countless other industry leaders. Ready to join them? Switch to AI-powered spend management at Brex.com.
We're going to jump to our mentoring round where we're going to ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We're going to take you back to what we were talking about up front, because I'm sure you reflect on it. And again, as we just were, when the board gave you the green light and said, yes, we want you to be our next CFO. Thinking back now to that young 28-year-old self who stepped into the role for the first time. And again, you've had several CFO roles now. So what is it that you didn't know at that place in time that, today is obvious to you? But, and I always ask it this way, what is the piece of advice you'd give that person? He knew a lot, but not everything.
Two things come to mind. One, I think it's really the CFO. The thing I love the most about the role is just the purview you have. You have your view across the entire business, and I think it's really unique and a really privileged position to kind of have access to the information we have, to be able to take the small picture and connect it to the big picture. And I think it's our job to convey that big picture to our employees. So that ability to communicate clearly and connect dots for folks, provide context around business decisions, whether those are uncomfortable ones or good ones or happy ones.
Did you anywhere along the way try to augment your communication skills? I don't know. It might have been public speaking too. Again, you were quite a young CFO from the start.
Yeah. I found things that worked over time. It was not a strength in the beginning. In fact, I think I was pretty poor at it. And I'm not saying I'm terrific at it now. I'm a lot more comfortable now. I just found little techniques that would work for me. I found if I was scripted, I performed poorly. If I was prepared and unscripted, I would do well. And for me, I needed to put myself in a situation where I was comfortable with the content and kept my brain on during the presentation. And if I was just reading, that wasn't a good recipe for me.
Not scripted. Don't. If you depended on a script, you're not gonna be able to be engaging probably either.
The other thing that comes to mind though is I had no idea at age 28 or whatever it was at that time, but the number of tough conversations you have to have, and I don't think we're trained for that as accountants and finance people, but whether that's with people, whether that's around financial planning and budgeting with leaders, whether that's with shareholders, some of the topics we touched on earlier, you got to get comfortable, saying no and having those tough conversations. I don't think I'm the best in the world at this, but you got to be prepared to have them.
We'd like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side. Is there something in general that people don't know about you?
In the office, I'm very calm. I'm very organized, and I get called calm more often than any other adjective, at least to my face. At home, I'm a little more of still in the adolescent phase, I think, with my daughters. So it's a lot of childish behavior with my daughters.
You have two
I
daughters?
have two daughters. Yeah, I'm a Swiftie. I can say that. I'm not ashamed to say it. Yeah, I think I'm probably a little different in my inside my home than I am inside my office.
What about a book selection? You have anything you'd like to recommend or something that made an impression on you?
The one book I still refer to, I read it early on in life. The 7 Habits book of highly effective people. I still go back to some of those concepts and refer to them in presentations I give and everything else. For me, those 7 habits, most of them resonate really, really well, and I try to live by them.
Get specific with us. Is there one in particular?
The notion of just making the most important thing, and then the sharpen the saw concept, where if you have 3 hours to cut down a tree, spend the first hour sharpening your saw. Those concepts really resonate with me, and are things I try to convey.
We are up to our last question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And what we want to know are what your priorities are for the next 12 months as a CFO. What are your priorities?
Well, I am optimistic that after a couple of really tough years, particularly in the technology space, that 2024 will be better, at least in the public markets. The public markets tend to be lead, and then business performance tends to follow. And so I'm taking a glass half full approach as we enter 2024, that things will improve, and I think technology companies more broadly, Coveo certainly as well, worked really hard to adjust their business models to the realities over the past couple of years. And I think now we need to be ready for hopefully brighter skies again. And so for what that means for Coveo, growth is always going to matter the most. So making sure that we are doing the things that put us in the best position to see growth reaccelerate again. We need to be really clear and communicate well with our stakeholders, our public shareholders, and so on, the things we're doing and why we're doing those and how we're doing against those. And so making sure we've thought through how we will convey that plan, and ultimately just be ready. When there's been lots written in business texts over the years that those who come out of these cycles the fastest, just like an F1 race going around the corner, it's not how fast you are in the corner, it's how fast you come out. That same analogy, I hope, is what will apply in 2024 for the technology space. So we're working hard to make sure that from an organization, a product, business model, and capital market strategy, that we're ready for that.
Brandon Nussey, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Really appreciate you having me, Jack. Thanks so much.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.